Hi, podcast listeners. This is your host, Jenna Pecor, and I'm so excited to bring you our episode for today. If you are a first-time listener or a listener who has been with me since day one and you love what I'm doing, I want to encourage you to support the podcast by giving a small donation. I love bringing you new faces and interviews, but it does take time and resources to do it. And any support you'd be willing to give goes towards website upkeep, travel, time, and costs, and would help me greatly to keep doing what I'm doing. Give your support by going to paypal.me/Faces of Grand Prairie. Today I'm speaking with Chief Daniel Scesney of the Grand Prairie Police Department. Though Chief Scesney has only officially been chief for about 2 weeks, he's been an officer with the GPPD for 19 years. He tells us about his service as a police officer in the Marines, about his career in Grand Prairie, and about why he thinks Grand Prairie is truly a special place to be in law enforcement. I'm so glad he's agreed to sit down with me. He was a pleasure to meet and talk to, and I hope you listen to find out more about our new chief of police. Recorded in the police station off George Bush in Grand Prairie, here is Chief Daniel Scesney. Well, good morning. So today I am here with my guest, newly appointed Chief Daniel Scesney. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
I'm so glad. Okay, I've never had the honor of being inside this building, which I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but this is an amazing, amazing building.
It is. Our building is a reflection of what our citizens think about us, and it's beautiful. As you can see, we are right here at 161 in Arkansas. We've got a great view of the summit, the epic waters, and so it's nice to look out the window and see people enjoying Grand Prairie every day. Yep,
there's a walker outside. We got some ducks out there. It's pretty windy outside today, but I always thought when this building went up, I just could not believe like how unique it looked. And I just thought, how beautiful does that building look? And it was just such a great addition.
It is. It really helps accentuate the 161 corridor. You know, we were at 801 Conover for years and years and years here in Grand Prairie. And, our citizens thought it was time for a new building for not just the police department, but fire administration as well, as you know.
Oh, yes.
And it's great. It's really beautiful. As I said, you know, as we're talking, there's a whole family of, there's probably 10 or 20 ducks out there.
There's ducks?
I think they're taunting our duck hunting police officers.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, there's just people walking around. It's such a neat view. And you can see all the development like around 161 from here. And you can even see, you pointed out to me just a second ago, you could see the Dallas skyline, which is so neat.
You sure can. Our friends over at IKEA are just down the way. We've got, of course, right across the street is the DeBisky Career High School, which is fantastic for the ISD. We're training up some kids to be future leaders over there and other spots here in Grand Prairie. And we can see our friends over here to the east in Dallas. So we're very lucky.
Yep, I've got some of those students actually doing some recording for the podcast.
I'm not surprised.
I know. I was like, you know what? We need to start using some of these seniors, like who are interested in this. So we've got a couple that have already recorded like nonprofit spotlights.
Perfect.
For our nonprofits. So it's really cool. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Camarillo, California. I got to Texas as quick as I could. Let's see. I was there until 1992 when I graduated from high school in Camarillo, Scorpions. And it was a beautiful place to live. It was a very modest farming community when I was there. And it sort of made their hay picking strawberries. And now it is nowhere near like it was when I grew up there. The house that I grew up in was very modest. I don't know, probably you could buy it here for somewhere around $100,000. Just you're in realty, so you understand.
I do, yes.
Today, that same house in California is probably worth close to $1 million and hasn't changed a bit just from where it's sitting. So that area in Ventura County is completely exploded. But it was a nice place to grow up because I don't think I even owned a pair of pants until I graduated high school. It's like close to 65 year round. So it was really nice. Got out of when I graduated high school, I was kind of in a tough spot because I had lost my mom to cancer when I was 8 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so, thank you. So my dad and I were sort of bachelors, And then he passed away when I was 17 from a heart attack. So very quickly I realized I needed 3 hots and a cot, so to speak. And my best friend had joined the Marines, which in full transparency I thought was a terrible idea. But he came back on leave from boot camp, and he had a jazzy new uniform and a nice car, and all the girls were paying him attention. So I thought, well, there might be something to that. So I joined up. I always knew I wanted to be a police officer, so I sort of looked to see if they had military police or something like that. And they did. Matter of fact, I digress. That picture right there, you see, what your listeners can't see, but that's a picture of me in kindergarten. I have a badge on. That's my mom in the background.
No, you don't just have a badge on. You have a red cowboy hat.
I was hoping you'd leave that part out.
No, if you're going to bring up a picture, I'm going to have to mention how cute it is that you're wearing a red hat. He's probably, I don't know, how old were you, 6?
I was 6 years old. I'm wearing my red cowboy hat and red boots,
oh my God.
Which every kindergarten kid should wear on their first day of school. But I'm wearing a badge.
That's what you wore to your first day of school?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny. I love it.
And my mom allowed me to do that. Anyway, that's on Roman Avenue in Camarillo.
Wow.
And my kindergarten was just right at the end of my street, so it was really neat. But anyhow. Oh,
I love that.
Yeah.
So you did have it inside of you.
It's in my blood, for sure. Yeah, I love that picture. But and hey, I had a cowboy hat. So I get some street cred with the Texans, right?
Yeah, it was predestined. You were supposed to be here.
Indeed. So anyhow, so I joined the Marine Corps, and I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement, so I became a military policeman. I did that for 4 years, completely changed my life. The Marine Corps, any Marine will tell you this, but they know about leadership. They understand about discipline and work ethic. And it really opened my eyes. I was sort of just a surfer, kind of going day to day, and and I started understanding about drive and ambition and discipline and so forth. So the Marine Corps did a lot of fantastic things for me in those regards. Did 4 years in the Marine Corps, realized very quickly that I wanted to do something else in law enforcement. So I got out, and I was married at that time, and my ex-wife was from the Dallas area, and like any other good husband, they listen to their wives, right? So I moved back here with her to the Dallas area, and I've been here ever since. So I love Grand Prairie. It is, I mean, the citizens here are just fantastic. We enjoy broad support. So I applied at one police department, the Grand Prairie PD. Been here ever since.
Wow.
And I have I've been here 19 years. I've done I worked in our Dalworth community for many years in a street crimes unit. I worked in undercover narcotics. I was a SWAT team leader for 7 years, which was some of the best times of my career. Some of the things I mentioned. Of course, a patrol supervisor for a short amount of time, and then virtually every investigative role I've been blessed enough to do. Homicide and major crimes, I worked for many years and enjoyed a lot of success there with a 100% conviction rate.
Wow.
And that's really a calling. Our team in our major crimes unit in particular are putting evil people in prison every day. They do good work. But so I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, something like that, retired chief, Steve Dye, tapped me on the shoulder, asked me to be one of his assistant chiefs. And I did that for the last 3 years and commanded our Investigative Services Bureau, our Special Investigations Bureau. And then he decided that he wanted to move on to city management. As we all know, he was promoted. And so I competed for his job and was blessed enough to edge out some very capable and fantastic competition. And here I am. So
wow. I have so many questions. Okay, first of all, when you say that you were in the military police, what is the difference between that and being, is there a difference between that and being in the military?
So, yes.
Okay.
So military policemen have 2 different roles. They have what we would call a field role, which means when you move into combat, back then military police would guard supply routes and things like that, and from ambush and so forth. although I was trained to do that, I did none of that. My role was just like you think a regular policeman was. I'd guard the base. I would deal with disturbances, traffic stops, and those sorts of things. And it is very similar, except everyone's already had a background check. So right. So the issues that I dealt with were you learn how to do traffic stops and disturbances and things like that. But it's also important to point out, and I always feel that I need to differentiate my service from the heroes that are serving today. I was in the Marines between 94 and 98, relatively peaceful time. The heroes that are in the military today are seeing some very difficult things that are causing some PTSD and other things.
Yes.
So military policemen today are dealing with veterans that are struggling with that mental health, those mental health issues. I saw very little of that while I was in. So I think it's important to point that out. I was in large part a peacetime Marine. Were you here in the United States? Yes.
Okay.
I was. So I served at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and in a little auxiliary landing field outside of Cherry Point, between Cherry Point and Camp Lejeune is a base called Bogue Field. And
so you went from the West Coast to the East Coast?
Yeah, the Marines are bad about that. They don't want you with your pals, so they send you the opposite of where you live, which is ironic because California, where I lived. There's Camp Pendleton and other bases,
right.
But they didn't care. They wanted me out of there. Of course, because I enlisted in California, I went to basic training at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and then you do some combat training at Camp Pendleton.
So you went through boot camp and all the regular stuff.
I did all that.
Okay.
Yep. And then from boot camp to back then it was called Marine Combat Training, MCT. I don't know what they call it today, but that's what it was then. And then from there, I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama. The Army was teaching Marines how to be military policemen back then. I have no idea why. That was a shot at my Army friends, by the way. But they did, and so I spent time there, and then I got orders to go to Cherry Point.
So did you just say that you wanted to be in the military police section, or how did that work?
So when I enlisted, you can request a occupational field.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted military policemen, but when I looked at all the field, that means I could get in what was called the 5800 MOS. I think that's military occupational specialty, but gosh, I could have that wrong.
Okay.
Anyhow, 5800, and when you look at all the jobs that are available, there's like dog handler, corrections, or military policeman. And at the time, corrections was a very coveted position for some reason. I wasn't interested in it, but I knew that being a rookie that I would not get that, so I felt comfortable taking the gamble. And if I became a dog handler, well, that'd been great. So they just plugged me in as a regular military policeman, and I'm so glad they did.
You just don't think about that. Like when you think about military, you don't think that there's all these other things that you have to do to support the military.
Sure.
That people don't really think about. I don't even think about there needing to be police, but then you think there's all these places where people live, that they need to be protected too.
That's right.
You just don't think about it.
No, and don't. It's not just about protection too. There's also issues involving natural disasters, and when I was in, there was two major hurricanes that came through Cherry Point, and
right.
so keeping the Marines and their families safe while
right.
There's a natural disaster going on. It's just part of the mission. So,
right.
And then again, at that time I was attached to Marine Wing Support Squadron 271. That's a field military police unit, and so you had to be ready to deploy and put on your field military policeman hat at any time. Fortunately for me, that never happened. I was stateside my entire time. In fact, I was somewhat of an anomaly because most Marines at least go to Japan for a year. And
why?
It's just part of the mission. So they all will deploy overseas for at least a year. Now, back then, now I'm sure with all the deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq, I don't think you have to go through Japan anymore. Again, I defer to the heroes that are there today. But when I was in, it was a requirement. But I didn't. I was mission essential was what they called me because I was a dog handler at the time. And that was something I got into later in my time in the Marines.
Oh, that's
and
so
cool. They needed me on the base, and I didn't go. So no real deployments for me. I think I went to one Roving Sands, New Mexico, one time where they did the atom bomb testing and did some training out there, but that was about it.
Oh, wow. So do you feel like your training in that, like early on in your career, how do you feel like it would have been different if just training to be a regular police officer?
Oh my God, it gave me such a huge head start.
I was going to say.
Just simple things. So learning how to do a traffic stop. It seems very basic to non-police officers, but it is not. It's very complex. There are strategies about how you approach a car, your lighting, where you park. I mean, the goal is to make sure everybody stays safe.
Right.
The majority of that I already had buttoned up before I got here.
Right.
Dealing with very volatile domestic disturbances. That's unfortunately something that happens a lot in the military. I'd already had that buttoned up. So some of those things that many recruits have to learn from ground zero, I was blessed to have already had that training in the military, and it was a very good, it applied very well. It was very similar.
Yeah.
You know, again, everyone had already had a background check. So
right.
You know, the level of danger I suspect was far less. But nonetheless, it was a nice baby step.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point. Every community, whatever that community looks like, has its own personality, so to speak, or characteristics about what kind of things you're going to encounter when you're in it, I would imagine. So, you know, when you say, you know, high level of, you know, domestic disturbance, I can see that. You know, I've had friends that are in the military, wives that, you know, I know that that's part of it. So when you come to a place like Grand Prairie, or when you go to a place like any of the other cities, every city has its own thing that you're trying to kind of, you know, so did you find it difficult to go from that type of environment to like a city type of environment?
You know, you touch on something that is, it's true, but the public doesn't see it as individual departments and cities. And let me give you an example. An officer that does something incredibly unethical in Timbuktu, Wisconsin. Gosh, I hope there's not a real Timbuktu, Wisconsin. But just somewhere else in the country.
Right.
Our officers feel that in minutes in Grand Prairie because of the speed of social media.
Right.
So, and the challenge for us is, I used to hear my old boss, Steve Dye, use a similar analogy. You know, if you go and have a bad experience at a restaurant tonight, you may not go back to that restaurant, but you're not going to hold it against, you know, the restaurant next door.
Right.
But in law enforcement, if you have a police officer that wears a blue uniform in Wisconsin that does something unethical, or New York or wherever, suddenly every cop in the country that wears a blue uniform is being lumped together. And so that is a challenge that we in law enforcement are trying to overcome. And we try very hard to humanize ourselves. You know, you've seen silly videos that cops all over the country will make doing lip sync and trying to show that, you know, we're not just, you know, Officer Scesney, I'm Daniel, right?
Right.
And here's who I am, what I'm about. But it's a challenge because there are very, we have so many police officers in this country, it only takes one.
Right.
The other tricky part about that is we are also our own worst enemy. And let me explain what I mean. So, you know, back in the 60s, you had very unethical Jim Crow laws. And you had police officers that were using German Shepherds on African American people on protest lines.
Right.
And so when that protester got home that night and was sitting around the dinner table, they're telling their children, don't trust the police, and rightfully so. Well, then that child grows up and sees Rodney King get beaten.
Right.
Okay? So that child then is now an adult, goes to the dinner table and tells their children, don't trust the police. Well, then fast forward when that kid grows up and maybe that kid reads the justice report on, say, Ferguson and says, well, you know, there was some unethical behavior there. Don't trust the police. And so, but the point I'm trying to get is as we have continued through history, there's plenty of fuel there to show that, people that experience really unethical things from the police are telling their kids not to trust us. So when we encounter kids that don't trust the police, on some level I can understand.
Right. The
downside is there's never been a more ethical, honorable, and noble profession base in policing in history than there is right now. There are pockets of I think that is even too broad. There are officers that have done unethical things, no question about it. But nobody wants that to occur less than police. We don't want our badge tarnished. Right. So getting back, that's a long answer to a short question. But in Grand Prairie, our strategy is we are the community is us, and we embed in the community. As you know, cops everywhere in Grand Prairie.
Very much. And I will say the hard part about what I've noticed in being a police officer in the department, you're kind of running a business at the same time in a way. You have a brand, you have an image, you have a face. And so it's like you're trying to do that at the same time as you're trying to do this job of protecting the community and do all those things. And what I will say is that not every city does it the same way. But what I've seen in Grand Prairie is, I don't know that there's a better example of a community, of a city where everybody works together for the betterment of that city, as well as Grand Prairie does it. We have our issues, everybody does. But if you look around you, just with us sitting right here, we can see everywhere from this office with the windows. This is an example of the idea of how Grand Prairie comes together to make their community better. And that is definitely something I feel from the police officers in this city. I interviewed Tammy Chan the other day, and she is with the Grand Prairie Homeless organization or outreach organization. And she was talking so complimentary about how the police department and her, y'all are trying to work together to think of new ways to handle homelessness and to deal with homelessness and think outside of the box. And how do we address some of these things that are keeping people in this situation? How can we think of that's very innovative, and it's something that's necessary, and it's something that society is kind of forced upon y'all because of the video cameras and social media, for good reason. Yeah. But I think that Grand Prairie, personally, from what I've seen, does just a phenomenal job at it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I agree. We partner with our community every day to try to provide a safe environment and a higher quality of life. In fact, that's part of our mission statement. That is a goal. We also understand that our citizens know what seems off, or when their spidey senses, I like to call it, is going off. I want them to pick up the phone and call 911. Don't worry about calling the non-emergency number. You pick up the phone, you call 911, say something doesn't feel right. Because of that partnership that we enjoy, it gives us just a 30-second head start even. The cops in Grand Prairie like catching crooks. I'm going to tell you that now. They are in good shape. They're not going to be outran, and they are very proactive. So when we team up and our citizens are calling us and reporting suspicious behavior, it helps drive down our crime, which crime is way down, as you know. So that's nice. The other thing is we enjoy it. We enjoy being part of the community. Our officers are encouraged. If they're out here patrolling and they see some kids shooting hoops, they get out and shoot hoops.
Yep.
That's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. And we don't have citizens calling up here going, why are the cops shooting hoops instead of patrolling? No, they appreciate that because we are building a relationship with the kids. Then the kids want to be like police officers, want to obey the law. They understand that we're people. That's just one small example. But and you mentioned some community initiatives about some of our homeless outreach, but that's just one piece. I'll just give you one of my favorites is Children First Counseling Center. I'm on the board of directors, and here's an organization that's been in Grand Prairie for over 50 years. Their job is to make kids and families whole again after abuse. We're great at catching the perpetrators, but it's very difficult to make these kids whole again, and they do it every day. So one of the things we do is we have a car show right out this window once a year. It's last Sunday in April. and we just flood it with cars, and then we give 100% of the proceeds to the counseling center so they can make kids whole again. Just one example. But we fish with the kids. We go out and we do runs. I mean, we do a penny challenge where we collect money for Special Olympics. The Spring Classic motorcycle competition is something we do every year. So all of these community initiatives are part of our strategy, because being a police officer in this city doesn't mean you just respond from call to call. That's part of it. But part of it is building a relationship.
You also encourage your officers, I don't know if you encourage them, but for living in the community that they live in, that's something that we see a lot of too.
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that our police officers are allowed to do is have a take-home car, police car, when they live in the city. And the nice thing about that for them is I allow them to drive that car in their off time. So if they're in the city and they need to go run up and get their cleaning or go get a sandwich, they're allowed to take their police car. The benefit of that is it's a force multiplier. Do you think Grand Prairie cops are going to drive by a situation that needs policing if they're off duty? They don't.
Right.
They love it, and they'll see an opportunity that needs some intervention, they jump right in. So again, it's part of this overarching strategy, but I would challenge anybody. If you take more than a 5-minute ride in Grand Prairie, you're going to see a police car. I guarantee you.
Oh, I can attest to that completely.
Keep speeding down too.
Yeah, we had I lived on the north side for a while, and there was an officer that lived, I think it was on British, and he always parked his car right in front. And I was like, an officer lives in my neighborhood, which always made me feel better, And then not only that, but then you also, and I wanted to bring this up before I forgot, but you also have the Citizens on Patrol. And I don't know how many people out there know that this is a program that you guys do. I'm sure you've seen a car that says Citizens on Patrol. I don't know if anybody I'm sure a lot of people know what that means, but not everyone. So
yeah, so Citizens on Patrol is a program that we do. It's an offshoot of our Citizens Police Academy. We pull back the curtain. We invite our citizens to come in, and we give them a very in-depth look at what being a Grand Prairie police officer looks like. When I say in-depth, I mean we put them in the squad cars and we let them run the track. We take them to the firing range. We let them shoot our service pistols. We bring in our major crimes detectives, domestic crimes, you name it. Every unit in the department has a training block. Our community prevention unit spends a lot of time. In fact, J.D. West and Greg New, who you mentioned before we got started, are running that program. So all of our citizens have an opportunity to become a Citizens Police Academy alumni. Once you complete that course, then we're really good about trying to recruit out of that class for volunteers, and Citizens on Patrol is one example. So now what we do is we give you the keys to the Citizens on Patrol car, get your radio or uniform, and we ask you to go out and patrol your neighborhoods. And they do. The other thing they do for us is if we have, say for instance, a police officer that unfortunately had to make an arrest, the Citizens on Patrol will come and back up the officer and wait on the vehicle wrecker for us. So that means that normally that would be done by a backup officer. That backup officer can get back in the community and begin to patrol again, and our Citizens on Patrol is alleviating that responsibility. So just think about that for a second. Imagine how many more offenses we're stopping because we have citizen volunteers out here that are helping us fight crime. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Very robust program. We love it. It's going nowhere, and they keep winning awards.
It's going nowhere as in it's staying, not it's going nowhere as in.
Yes, thank you for correcting me. That's exactly right. It is staying with a capital exclamation point. And that group wins award after award after award. So when they go out here and to many of these conferences, I suspect some of these other cities are holding their head low when they see our team show up. We clean up.
Today, our nonprofit spotlight is on Children First Counseling Center.
At Children First, children going through difficult situations are given the opportunity to heal and grow. Counseling services are available for people aged 3 to adults and are provided by licensed, master's degree professionals. If you desire the help of a professional counselor, please contact the Center for information regarding payment options. Their goal is to keep their services within financial reach for those who recognize the value of counseling. if you or someone you know might need this service, or if you would like to donate your time or resources,
please find more information about Children First on their website, www.childrenfirstinc.org.
Well, I've been to many a lunch in an auction where y'all have raffled off like a day with the SWAT team. And I always thought that'd be kind of fun.
We do that. Yep.
Yes, you do.
We do a day with SWAT. We recently started, the SWAT team has been taking kids to school in the Bearcat. That's a cool deal for, and when we raffle that stuff off, just to be clear, all that money, 100% goes to the charity.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
it's a donation completely.
Donation. Yeah. But our officers enjoy doing that because it's really cool for the kids to show up at school in a Bearcat with the SWAT team. I mean, they get instant street cred. Look,
right.
You're not getting bullied after the SWAT team high fives you on your way to school, right? So it's pretty neat. But we also do day with SWAT. So they'll take them out to the range. They'll shoot the marksman rifles, the 50 cals, the 308s, and so forth. It's really, really neat.
It is, and I'm friends with Jeff Copeland, and he does a lot of pretty much every auction that there is in the city of Grand Prairie when it comes to charities. And it's always funny to see the people he picks, because he always picks on people to try to get them. The people he picks to do the SWAT, like he'll look out in the audience. You've been to one of his auctions, I'm sure. But when you look out in the audience and you see, retiree 75-year-old, that he's like, come on now, I know that you want to go into this, do this SWAT training, and they feel so, but they'll donate it to maybe somebody else. But it's just hilarious, the thought of that. But it's always been something I thought would be fun.
Yeah, you're right about Councilman Copeland's. I've never heard a better auctioneer. He is so talented and funny, and I'll tell you, you don't want to be the one that's moving around a bunch when he's when he's doing.
Before I knew him, I was one. I think I put my hand up to do something in my hair, and he goes and he just pointed me out. And I was like, oh gosh, I better be careful. But I actually helped him do an auction outside of the city of Grand Prairie once, which is a totally new experience, because usually when he's doing auctions here, he knows pretty much everybody.
Right.
But when he's out there, it's even funnier. And but yeah, he's a hilarious guy.
Yeah, he's done the Cattle Barons Ball, as I understand it.
Yes, he did.
He's done some stuff for the Seals in Coronado in California.
Yes.
There's a couple that I know. So
yeah, he's a funny guy. But so you were talking about the community. Well, one of the ways that I got to know a lot of officers is I was a manager at Texas Roadhouse. And so I started working there in 98, and then I was the manager there until 2005. We had a lot of police officers that would come in and eat, which I loved. And for me, there's a lot of them that I knew even, from my experience in high school, like, Officer New was my resource officer, or even people that were like related to people I knew, brothers, sisters, because at the time there was a lot of young officers. Yep. We had a lot of undercover officers that would come in, guys on what is the drug? Is there a drug? Maybe it's the undercover that I'm thinking of. I don't remember, but anyway, they would come in, and most of the time they would be in their regular clothes, but sometimes they'd be in their uniforms.
Right.
And it was always nice to have them there. Again, you're seeing an officer eating his dinner. You're seeing an officer talking to people, and they would come in and they would pass out their badges, their sticker badges, and the kids would come up and talk to them. And as the manager, I would always make sure when I went to table, if a kid showed interest that there's officers, I would always make sure to say, you need to go over there and talk to them. They would love to talk to you, because I got to talk to them all the time. It was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. And so our officers still carry around those stickers.
Oh, yeah. My daughter has one. Couple, actually.
We love opportunities to connect with kids. And that doesn't surprise me, the story that you shared about our team going to a good restaurant and connecting with kids. I mean, remember, these guys are working the street. They'll jump in, try to get a meal real quick, and get back to work. And so we try. Obviously, we'll eat in Grand Prairie, and having that chance to connect with kids is awesome. We do that all the time. And matter of fact, I feel this is a good opportunity to bring something up. So sometimes we'll be out and we'll hear moms or dads say to their kids, "Hey, you better straighten up, or I'm gonna turn you over to those guys," or something like that. And I would just tell you, please, please, please do not do that. we want to connect with the kids. We don't want to be used as a disciplinary tool, right? And so it's funny. We'll see that from time to time, but our guys will normally look at the kid and wink and give him a sticker and try to connect. I think parents are mean well, but sometimes we're not crazy about
They
that.
think it's funny. I've seen people do it, and it's not meant to be. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. You don't want to be, because you know what, Santa gets the good part.
That's
right.
right.
So
Yes.
it's like
Strong point.
don't pin the police and help you discipline.
Gosh, I know. Who wants to be the opposite of Santa? That's an excellent point you just made.
No, I mean, come on. But so one of the questions I sent you, I tried to look up some stuff on your Facebook page. You don't have a Facebook page.
Correct.
So are you just not a social media guy, or what's the deal with that?
Well, I have a Twitter account. You probably came across that. I have 2 kids, and I just don't have time to keep up with 2 different social media accounts. I try to push out things that I'm doing on Twitter as much as I can. But I mean, I'll bet you I've got 200 emails sitting in my inbox right now that I've got to tend to. So I like that my family does it, because I can every once in a while I can get on there and catch up pictures of distant relatives and so forth. But it's just not something I do. I don't have any issue with it. It's just not for me. And I've seen it get a lot of cops in trouble too.
I was going to ask you.
Sometimes people can take meaning out of a photo that was never intended. And I like to ride motorcycles. In fact, you probably gathered that as I've got a picture of one on my wall. And maybe somebody thinks motorcycles are unsafe, so that, they'll, which I get that. But you understand my point.
Yes,
sometimes
absolutely.
it's easier than just have to defend why I like to get on a bike and disappear for an hour, or whatever it is.
Right.
Maybe my daughter's involved in this event, or my son's involved in that event. Some of that I just like to keep close to the vest.
Absolutely. And everybody has a different opinion about it, and it's hard when you're a face of the public eye.
Sure.
To have to think about how you're putting the image out there and how do people are going to take it. And if you're any type of responsible public figure, that's something you think about all the time.
Right.
And but then you have Mayor Jensen that's constantly on Facebook, but he uses it. That's his way of reaching out to people that live in this community. He's really good about that kind of thing. I'm decent at it, but I don't know. I don't know if I were the mayor if I would handle it as well as he does.
He's an expert. There's no doubt about that.
Man.
Our council's great at it. I think a slight distinction I would point out is, the mayor and the council are elected by the citizens, and so they do a great job of connecting with them. I work for the mayor and the elected officials and all the citizens, and I want to underscore that I work for them and for you all. And so I am also a representation of them and all of you all. And if I started a Facebook page today, people would be bored. I mean, there's just nothing jazzy in my life. I just don't have time for it.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot. That brings up a good point. Okay, so. The police department is the city hall is y'all's boss, so to speak, right? So how are y'all structured within the city? I don't know that I didn't even think about that.
My direct boss is the deputy city manager and the city manager. They are in that order.
Go ahead.
Let me turn that off. I'm sorry.
Do you need? Go ahead and get it if you need to.
No, I'm not going to get it. Heck, I don't even know how to mute it. So my direct boss is the deputy city manager and the city manager, in that order. The city manager's boss is the elected officials. So while technically the elected officials aren't in my chain of command, for lack of a better term, I mean, they represent the citizens, and I work for, and every cop in this police department works for the citizens. So does the city manager, deputy city manager, and everyone on the city staff. We work for the folks, and we don't forget that.
Right.
So, when the city manager, or the deputy city manager calls me because of an issue, of course I work for them and we work it out. But the same is true when a city councilman calls me. I mean, because I know they're not just calling me for calling me's sake. There's a constituent that has an issue, and I'm happy to help. I mean, it's just part of how it works.
Yeah.
And because we have such a great relationship, and by the way, our city council supports the cops and fire department. They are fantastic, and I can go on and on. So that symbiotic relationship works so great. When a citizen reaches out and needs help, it gets taken care of. And by the way, this is another great opportunity to point out. If there's someone that has a problem and they call the police, they're not going to get shuffled along. What we'll do is we'll get their information. We'll contact the appropriate person for them and get it taken care of, because we're not just crime fighters or problem solvers. And that's just part of our philosophy.
I was listening to your to the receptionist downstairs, or I don't know what her title was, but I heard her answer a call, and I love the way that she handled the call. I guess somebody was calling to find out about where they could park on a street, and that their neighbor was parked on a different side of the street. And she goes, well, we can't make them move. We can't legally do that. And then she goes, no, I completely agree. People should have a much more understanding for the neighbors and where they park the cars. I wish we could, but we can't. I just love the way that she was handling it. And that was just a call about somebody parking on a street, and their neighbor parked maybe too close to their driveway. I don't know what happened, but it was very indicative of the attitude.
Yeah, it's important for our team to convey that while we may not be able to solve every problem, sometimes people just want a sympathetic ear.
Yep, absolutely.
And sometimes we can solve the problem, just not the way that they want.
Right.
And so, throwing everybody in jail is seldom the answer.
Right.
Writing everybody tickets is seldom the answer. Putting speed bumps in every neighborhood is seldom the answer.
Right.
But sometimes it's the answer. And I think if our team does a good job kind of setting the table, so to speak, and speaking to people that the way they want to be spoken to, talk to people like they're their family and friends, that's like 99% of it.
Absolutely. So how long have you officially been in your role now?
So January the 18th is when I became officially responsible for the police department.
Wow.
At midnight. And so, I don't know, what is that, a couple weeks now?
Weeks.
Yeah.
So what are you most excited about?
Wow, that's a good question. My very first evaluation here as a police officer, back then we would ask officers, what are your 3 goals? And most of us back then would say something like, learn the penal code better, or I don't know, get on this unit or that unit. One of my very first goals was become the police chief.
Wow.
At the time, that was incredibly ambitious, and I caught heck from everybody that read that. But I just knew that I wanted to lead this organization. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. Now, having said that, it's really important to understand that the way we work here, while I'm the face of our organization, this is a team sport. And if you wear a gold badge in this building, that means you're a supervisor. Your job is to remove roadblocks from the crime fighters. And they know it. So our philosophy is sort of an inverted triangle, so to speak. In a normal organization, you got the CEO at the top, and then, and work your way down. For us, the bosses are at the bottom, and because we prioritize the work of our crime fighters, because they're the ones that are making it safe for our citizens. So we are looking at everything, and it's exciting to be able to drill down and get rid of any red tape to help facilitate that mission. Our former chief was really good at that too, and I was on his command staff for 3 years. So there's no drastic shift in strategy. I'll just tell you now.
Right.
It'd be crazy to do that because it's working so well. But having said that, being the new guy, it is exciting to have the opportunity to be the face of our department and continue to be a part of a leadership team that is, I'm just telling you, we're the best police department in the country. I know that's ambitious. I know that my friends to the north, east, south, and west are going, yeah. But we're the best. We just are. And that's because our cops are bought in to what's important, and that's the folks.
100%. I talk to people all the time, officers all the time, and they are 100% bought in. They're excited. You know, they're really, really interested in doing something really great for the place where they live. And a lot of them have been here for a very long time. I don't know how many officers graduated from high schools in Grand Prairie.
Sure.
A lot.
We've got a bunch. And you also see that very, very few officers, when they get hired here, leave until they retire. And our retention rate is off the charts.
Yes.
It's because they love being Grand Prairie police officers. I mean, I'm just another example. I didn't realize how blessed I was to get hired here when I first got hired. I just wanted to be a cop, like a lot of the guys do. But you very quickly go from being a cop to being part of a family that we stand shoulder to shoulder when things are great, but also when it's our darkest hour. And, you know, we recently went through that with the loss of Officer A.J. Castaneda, but, you know, we also lost Sergeant Greg Hunter and Officer Lyndon King. And our officers pull together, and we get through that spot because we're a family. We also have great brothers and sisters all around us that rallied around us to help us get through those dark hours, and we do that for our brothers and sisters as well around us. But it helps having a very tight family when things are tough, but also it's fun.
It is, absolutely. So I want to hear, so 2 things I want to hear from you. Number 1, I'm a dog person, so it always fascinates me to hear dog handlers. Like, did you enjoy that?
I did. So I had a Belgian Malinois, and his name was Marco. At the time, the Marines, the way they did it was you would transfer your dog to handler. I was on board with that. Marco was not a fan of that plan, and so I spent about a month feeding him treats to a chain link fence.
Oh, wow.
Because he wanted no part of me. And then I spent about another 2 weeks sitting every day, sitting in a cage with him on one end and me on the other, throwing him treats before I could even put a leash on him.
Wow.
He was not a fan. He liked his old handler, and Daniel was just not the direction he wanted to go. He was 10 years old, which is way too long usually for a working dog. So he was pretty set in his ways. And but we crossed that bridge and became best friends.
Oh.
So we would patrol together. We would go through the McDonald's drive-thru. He was a fan of cheeseburgers, and I would. And he liked to bite round objects. So whenever we would be doing a sweep, say of a barracks, if a Marine left a basketball out, it would get deflated because he'd bite it. But besides his bad attitude at times, he and I were best friends. And now, as I understand it, the military does it different. The dogs get to stay with their handlers, and they fix that. But when I was in, it was tricky. And I learned a lot about dog handling.
Yeah.
That served me well here because the fundamentals are the same. The way a dog picks up on scent cones and works a track and things like that hasn't changed. So it helped me in a variety of reasons, not just knowing how our dog handlers are working, but also sort of setting up the puzzle pieces around a problem so that when the dog handler's in a wooded area, for instance, we don't have other officers that are messing up the track or going to get bitten. So.
Oh, dogs are so amazing.
They are, yeah. And we got a bunch of good ones.
I watched a documentary about how they try to identify seeing eye dogs to help people that are blind, and the process of which you have to kind of go through it to eliminate the dogs that just don't fit into that particular type of work, and it takes a long time to really see their personality and what they're interested in. I could imagine for law enforcement dogs, oh gosh.
We just went through that. We Officer Lance Monty is one of our dog handlers, and his dog retired after a fantastic career, and he got another dog, but the dog was very skittish. And so he tried to work with him for just a little while, but it just didn't work. And so we had to send that dog back for a little more formalized training, and he ended up getting a different dog. But it's true. I mean, the handlers, at times, I remember in Lackland when they were picking dogs in the Marines dog handling schools in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And those handlers would, bounce a ball just to see how the dog would react. Because, some of these dogs don't work for, in fact, most of them don't work for food reward. They work for a ball or a Kong or something like that. So they want to see that excitement. And you're right. It's a very, it isn't as simple as saying we're going to take that dog and he's going to be a police dog. There's a lot that goes into, you're right, that personality mesh and so forth.
Absolutely. The really cool story about that movie, or that documentary I watched, there was a veteran that he lived with his mom, and he'd come back from being in military service, and he was having some trouble with just kind of, he thought being because what they do is this particular program sends them to a fostering home to kind of, when they're puppies, so that the fosters are trained to kind of identify different type of behavioral things. And they're not training the dogs to be that way. They're just kind of seeing. So he kind of said, this might be something really neat for me to do, just to have these dogs in my house and, all that stuff. Well, one of the dogs that ended up coming to his house was not doing well with trying to learn how to do all being a seeing eye dog. Oh my goodness, there's so many things. But he took to that ex-soldier, and so the dog got deleted from the program, but he ended up being a service dog for this military. And I thought, God, it just, watching that, dogs performs, and this is not a podcast about dogs, but dogs just perform so many things for us, and I just think it's amazing. And being a military, ex-military guy yourself, even that, just being able to serve that's an enormous thing for somebody that came out of that situation.
Yeah, it is. We they're fantastic. They're every bit as part of our family as the human counterpart. Yeah. And we when they retire, they get a retirement ceremony. Do they really? They do. Yeah.
That's so
in fact,
cool.
Bullet, Lance's dog, we just did a retirement ceremony for him, and it's up to the officer, but Bullet did, and in fact, Google it. I mean, that dog did a lot of work, good work, and for the public. And and we had another dog that we actually got from the pound that was
from Prairie Paws.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. And we're able to train him into being. Now that is extremely unusual, but this particular case worked out very well due to a variety of circumstances. And that dog is getting drugs off the street right now.
Wow.
Yep.
The drug dogs came in when I was in high school, sniffed at the back of my trunk, and I had to go out there and let them open it. And that was the most terrifying experience. So my dad was an assistant principal at a different school. He hadn't gotten south yet. And my grandfather had purchased this used car, and I don't know what was in the back at one point in time or another, but all of a sudden I get dragged out of my class, and they're like, the drug dog smelled something in your car. And I'm like, excuse me? I was that's terrifying. But I opened it up. I was like, there's nothing in here, I promise. But I was like, thank you for doing your job, puppies.
Wow, I wonder where that car had been.
Don't even want to know. But we only have a few more minutes. But I wanted to ask you, are there any stories that you can share of some interesting thing that happened during your time before?
Interesting. I could tell you an embarrassing story.
Oh, yes, please do.
So just recently, probably, I don't know, maybe last year, I met a guy. We went to school together at TCU. He and I have been friends now for a few years, and he works for Mr. Ross Perot Jr., who, as you know, is a patriot. He loves military. He loves public service, servants, cops, firemen. But this man and his late father, truly, our country owes them a debt of gratitude. I mean, they are just salt of the earth men that have done far more than they have received. But they had a picnic, and they invited a number of people, and I was just very lucky to be one of hundreds that were there. and I really wanted to meet him. And so my friend introduced me to Mr. Perot, and he was very nice and cordial, and we exchanged a few pleasantries, and then I got out of the way because long line of people to meet him, right? Mm-hmm. And so, man, I'm walking away, my chest is poked out. I'm thinking, here's a guy who is just one of our nation's heroes, mm-hmm. certainly one of mine. And I sit down next to my pal, and he says to me, "What's all over your face?"
Oh, no.
And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Go look in the mirror." Well, I'd taken my daughter with me, and being a good dad, I had lathered her up with sunscreen because this was an outdoor venue. And after I got sunscreen all over her face and arms, I took the remainder of it, which was still in my hands, and put it on my face and arms. What I didn't realize is that the sunscreen that she had picked is impregnated with glitter. So my face looked like I had glitter all over my face. I don't know what that man thinks about me today. But
he goes, he's going to be the chief of police?
Oh, my God.
Oh, man.
It's embarrassing, but I don't know. I like to think he didn't realize it, but I'm telling you, he probably did and was just kind enough not to say anything to me because my friend noticed it immediately. But anyway, so I probably won't get invited back to next year, but anyway.
You know who probably loved it, though, is your daughter.
Oh, she did. She still tells the story.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's
but,
so funny.
It's this career, I've just been very blessed to have a million both great and difficult stories. Mm-hmm. That's one of them. But, there's, putting new shoes on kids' feet with Samaritan feet, or mm-hmm. helping children first, or I could just go on and on. Mm-hmm. Getting kids out of bad situations with the SWAT team, and mm-hmm. earning the nickname Slim. That's something. Nobody can say Scesney, as you know. My last name is difficult. I get Cincy and Scesney all the time.
Oh,
so they started calling me Slim early in my career. That nickname is stuck. Things like that. I've just been really lucky. And so if I can keep glitter off my face, I'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, I so thank you for spending an hour with me. It was just so delightful, and I'm glad I got to meet you.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to introduce myself to you and your listeners. It's been awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, have a wonderful day. God, it's so pretty. I'm looking outside right now. It's just glitter. Glitter. It's not glitter. It's sun.
I do not have glitter on my face today. I can promise you that.
I'm looking at the pond outside, and the sun is reflecting, and it kind of does. It's sparkly like that. But, man, it's beautiful. So
we'll come back anytime.
Yes. Enjoy your week. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.